It is in the rereading where you see how deeply he wrote.
Little warning if you came here from one of our future videos where we have guests on to talk about the beautiful arcs of One Piece and its storytelling.
If it's just the two of us, we lose our hinges. When we have a guest, we take some time and we go find the hinges.
In the future are going to be a little bit more focused on the arc, but you can't keep unhinged hinged with another unhinged. All right, enjoy the video.
Buckle up. So we had a big talk about it. We've decided we're going to go back through. We're going to call it. So let me do my welcome. Are you ready? Welcome to Tinfoil Talk.
Welcome to Tinfoil Talk.
This is the place we go to rehash people's favorite arcs and put our tin hats together to find the truth.
And I think it's essential that this arc is where we're starting off without a guess. So we're starting off with just the two of us. Why is that? Well, I think we'd struggle to find someone who would call this their favorite, first of all. But what is this arc? Is this the one where a boy breaks out of a bubble and makes everybody's employer think that they're slacking on the job by shouting that I just had a great nap?
No, this is the one where a boy hangs out with a mountain gorilla and then it eats a man's arm.
Oh, is this the one where there's like a 10-page backstory dedicated to a child with deadly weapons making a promise to his friend who then dies of off-screen accident?
It might be, but I thought this was the one where a kid who can't swim eats a fruit that makes him not swim.
It is, and then says, I'm gonna drown because I can't swim. Oh wait, I'd drown anyways, it's a whirlpool. So there is twice where him being unable to swim is irrelevant and him being unable to swim.
I thought this is the one where he met a dude who decided he loved chopping firewood so much he turned his hand into an axe. So, hey, do you want to hear something crazy that I think is going to color a lot of this series going forward as we do our second read through? I didn't start reading the manga until I caught up with the anime because I was a teenager and had time and also had never read a manga before, so I didn't realize how different it was. I didn't really know what manga was, frankly. I was a dumb teenager who didn't know what was happening, and I just was like, what a great story. A lot of the arcs in One Piece, I haven't actually ever read the manga. I've read key sections when we were about to go over it to refresh myself, but front to back, most arcs from before Punk Hazard, from before Dressrosa, I haven't read. This must have been surprising to you because it's so different.
It's so different. This stretch in particular, I noticed a lot of little things. This is so much more brutal than the anime. Anime viewers don't know that Koby got shot, dude.
Oh, yeah. And also that a dude got just shot in the head and blood went boom, flew through the air and then he dropped to the ground.
Well, that actually does happen in the anime. The guy getting shot, it's less bloody. It's more like, black silhouette. But like, I didn't realize Koby got shot. If people don't know about this, it's not just that Koby had a gun pointed at him because you're like, oh, that's just the 4Kids dub. No. Separately, when Koby was untying Zoro in the anime, Morgan was like, they're untying the Zoro. Someone go stop him. In the manga, he was like, okay, some guys go stop him. Everybody else, shoot him. And they all shot at him, and one of the bullets hits him.
He gets winged.
I'm seeing that there was more vision for what One Piece was going to be than we assumed very, very early on.
What are you talking about? I told you that so long ago. Once you've read ahead and you know, then it's just basically a big open book.
All right, tell me about a hat. I'm going to be doing my warm-ups. You tell me about a hat.
Okay, just as a pop-off, I first want to tell people what we're going to be doing in these in the future. So the whole purpose of this, as you know, is we're going to be going through with a bunch of different creators, seeing who wants to come on live with us to Tin Piece and put their tin hats together. And they're going to pick their favorite arcs and they're going to tell us, or I think sometimes it won't necessarily be their favorite arc in Favoritville. I think some of them will do us a solid and pick an arc they otherwise might not have picked if we've got things filled in. But here on Tin Piece,
I mean, yeah, that's blunt, but yeah.
Here in Tin Piece, we enjoy it when people work along. And then
Tin Piece. We're not going Tinfoil Piece. I didn't know what to put in the preview, so I just kind of did what
Tinfoil
I'm
Piece.
Tired.
And then the whole purpose is then we're going to go back through it and see when we put our tinfoil hats together what craziness we can come up with to figure out
what things we missed the first time and what hints might be in there that we can now find the goddamn One Piece.
We're going to find the One Piece. We're going with guests. We want to appreciate the series more deeply. We want to have more perspective, and we want to find the One Piece. That's the goals.
We're finding the damn
Your favorite
One
arc
Piece.
is Egghead? Cool kids. Way to have great taste.
Today, we decided we were going to start together the way that we started this journey out in the beginning. And we've been asked by a lot of people because they've missed it, I guess. So what is it that Drawk will be drawing? You're wondering if we're doing this strange thing with people? Thank you for asking that very important and wonderful question. This is why you're the squishies. In the beginning, before we interview somebody, we're going to ask them, in this arc, if you were to put together or idealize a tattoo, what would it look like and what would it be? And then Drawk, he's going to draw it for them.
If you were to get a tattoo based off of Romance Dawn, what would you get? What would be your
Oh my God,
Romance Dawn
thank
tattoo?
you for asking. I've been waiting for this question for so long. So I would have, obviously, Luffy's fruit, his gum fruit in it.
Okay.
And I would want the knife he stuck into his eyes in it.
So there's a fruit, and then what's up?
Remember, you're supposed to make a list of the items.
Okay.
The knife.
I am a tattoo artist, and I take lists properly because I'm good at what I do. Give me a second here. I'm so good. Fruit. Yeah. What's next on our list?
It's the fruit, the knife, the straw hat, and then Shanks holding Luffy glaring at the sea monster. That's it.
These feel like difficult concepts to combine. I will endeavor to do my best.
I have a methodology.
This is so easy other than Shanks holding Luffy. You're like, here's 3 objects and a scene.
Well, you know what? Instead of holding Luffy, you can have him holding him in front of the giant gum fruit.
You get out of here. I'm deciding what I'm doing.
You know what I think is going to happen is I'm going to talk about how I have a small prediction for 45,000 years, and then it's...
It's funny at this point. Yeah, go for it. What's up?
All right, here's my small prediction before we get into this. The straw hat is filled with hockey of some sort, and it is going to be a catalyst for the last major events.
You are crazy.
No, I'm right. The reason there's 2 straw hats and they are so important is the straw hat is more than a straw hat. The straw hat is filled with hockey. Look,
you could be right, but I need more than that could be true to go on board with that, you know?
I'm just saying that when I went back to the beginning and started reading, yes, exactly. You saw what happened in the knot.
I saw the knot. You can't untie a hat.
You don't need...
Because you can unweave a hat.
First of all, it's bullshit. It's woven. You can. As a person who's made cedar hats, I can tell you.
Okay, but would then every weave have hockey in it? And if that's the case, that'd be really fucking cool.
Exactly. Every weave has hockey. It's made with hockey.
That would be actually sick as fuck. Cat has also been stabbed before.
Not a big deal. It has to come off in a specific way. The hockey has to be initiated by it comes off from the beginning and it gets unraveled. Every weave has hockey. Yeah. So as I was reading it, I was thinking, so strange that the straw hat becomes so important right in the beginning of this piece again. And I was like, why dude make so much hatness? Why are we hatting so much right away? And then I started to think about all the things that the hat goes through and what it represents and what happens to him and how it starts off with Shank. And then when he is leaving him, how he immediately is like, no, you're going to take this hat. And I'm like, why is he giving him this hat? And then I was like, well, the hat itself could be something that's protecting. The hat itself could be something that has a power of its own within it or a force within its own. And I was like, after all those years of wondering if hockey can be in anything, and we found out that, yeah, it can be added to weaponry, it can be put into a knot, etc. I was like, if we were shown that it was put inside specifically string, a knot, a rope, then of course that kind of also comes over to a hat that's made out of string, that's roped together, that's woven. So yeah, that's my little minor prediction that has not to do with knot. It was just a thought.
I don't not feel it. It makes sense to me. And it would be the most badass thing in the world if as every weave was undone, more and more hockey was released. That'd be awesome. I also just like the idea that the hat carries a little bit of the will of all the people who've held it because it represents inheritance of ideals. The handing over the hat to me felt significant because of Shanks and Buggy's conversation and Buggy's flashback, where we find out the reason Buggy is the way he is
is, I know I said we're not talking about Buggy, but unfortunately now we are. I lied.
And now here we
I
are.
did. Future Buggy. We're talking about Egghead Buggy, where we see Buggy's true backstory, that he believed in Shanks and felt like Shanks was abandoning his potential and abandoning what he owed Roger of being the next great pirate by saying, nah, I'm not going to do it. But to me, it felt like an acknowledgement where Shanks found who he was looking for. Now, I actually believe in the theory, whether it was a retcon or not, because I think it was a retcon because he originally didn't want Ace to be Roger's son. I believe in the theory that Shanks thought the Gum Gum fruit was for Ace. I think that's a retcon at this point, but I do think the Gum Gum fruit was supposed to go to someone important. And after Luffy ate it and seeing how he behaved and seeing him be like, I'm going to be greater than you, I'm going to be the one, I think that was him being like, you know what? I am betting on this kid. That is going to be the kid. The way that Kuma did when he showed up on this island when Luffy was like 16 and saw him training. That was this moment for Shanks of being like, I'm not the one. Buggy was wrong about me, but this is him. It's not Roger's son. That's not how this works.
I think that originally Luffy was supposed to be Roger's son. I think in his head. And I think it changed.
You think so? Interesting. Which I think for the themes of the series, it works better if Inherited Will isn't about that. Isn't
but I
about
think when he first
bloodline.
did it, he thought that Luffy was going to be Roger's son. And then I think he started writing it.
At the very least, by Logetown, he changed
That's where I think it happened.
So you think by Logetown, he was like, wait, he can remind people of Roger, and then we see his real dad. And we're not going to say that's his real dad, but he can remind everyone in Logetown of Roger and still be someone else's kid, have his own destiny.
His idea about inherited destiny and inherited dreams.
Yeah.
So I think that I saw that change later because I think that the reason he gave it to him is the hat's going to end up being super important, super filled with haki, and is actually really powerful and protecting. And I think originally he might have thought that Luffy was Roger's kid, and he was like, it's meant to be with him. And if he feels the destiny to be the king of the pirates, I'm going to give him this hat as a protection because I know I can't stop him, and I'm no longer going to be on this island and be able to help contribute to his safety. So the least I can do is offer him this hat, tell him how important it is and that he needs to give it back to me one day so he cares for it, doesn't lose it or hurt it, so it continues to protect him. And that's why I guess it isn't apropos nothing. I guess there was a reason I was thinking about it. And that is why I think that he gave it to him in this one. Oh, and then this idea that Dancing Vairu said, if I may augment your theory further, if that is true, then it is definitely a technique from Wano, since hat weaving is a thing there, and since there's a giant sword in Wano, the culture probably originated from ancient giants.
God. And Ace, the other choice of sun god, learned how to weave hats and struggled because of his sun powers. I know fire isn't sun, but like his best attack was named after the sun, and he used it against Blackbeard, and he was the other possible inheritor of the will. Everyone talked about how he could be the next one. Oh my God. And I'm starting to believe there might be haki in this fucking hat. You're crazy. You're a lunatic.
Yeah, that's what I think. There's hack. I'm so excited that you're coming along for the ride now.
Look, I'm not, here's where I'm at. I think there's two levels of believing a theory. There's where I'm at with Hell Piece, where I'm like, I'm 100% in on this, and if I'm wrong, I'll be like, hey, I bet everything I had on it, and I stand by it. Then there's this, where I'm not betting 100% on it yet, but I'm going, I believe it enough that if it happens, I'm going to be like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, you did see it.
Okay, so I just want to say something. I'm going to look and see, and I'm going to try not to manipulate it and be a historical person who manipulates it, but I'm going to look and see along the way what other clues are given. But already I kept thinking about the fact he never loses this goddamn hat, right? Like, think about how many people lose their hat, and a hat blows away all the time, and it's difficult to find, and they're in battle, and their hat is obviously destroyed or missing. But this hat, his intention with it when he puts it places like on Nami's head and says, and puts it on and says, I'll be back. Or the fact that we had that he had never really lost it. Nothing bad had happened to it except for that one time that it got a hole, which allowed it to be repaired and have an intimate moment with a new crew member. So I was thinking about the next time that the only time we had him lose the hat is when he loses his brother. And Shanks can't bring back his brother, but he can bring back the hat.
Hockey is tied to ambitions. Ambitions is tied to dreams. The hat is the will of Joy Boy. And and early on, he's constantly almost dropping the hat. It's getting hurt and blowing away. But kind of as soon as he frees Nami's village, as soon as he frees his first kingdom from an oppressor, the hat is with him until he gets shaken and loses his dreams.
Exactly.
Holy shit. When is the next... It sticks to him. Once he becomes a liberator, once he beats Arlong, it sticks to him.
Stays with him and sticks to him because his dream is strong enough to keep the hockey attached to him.
What's up? This is up. It's not okay. Sorry, I'm looking for reference.
And so now I am convinced, as I was reading this and thinking into the future and looking at the past and the way it became something so important, I am convinced that originally Luffy might have meant to have been Roger's son, but originally Shanks felt like he was leaving Luffy all alone and he couldn't stop the destiny of Luffy's dream to become the Pirate King. So he gave him this hat with haki, knowing that as Luffy's dream strengthened, so too did the protection of the hat to stay with his person to help to give him luck and balance and move him forward more safely. And he made it be so important and was like, this hat means so much to me and you have to give it back to me one day. And we know it's not the end and we know Luffy has so much growing to do, but that he's going to do it because first, Shanks gives it back to him when he loses his brother. And second, how do we do the growing moment when Luffy is moving from old Luffy into I am going to be King Luffy? We see the hat sit on a rock in the changing seasons because Luffy realizes he has to grow as a man more. And when he is ready, he puts the hat back on and never loses it again.
I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about Blackbeard scarring Shanks, and the fact that Shanks has these scars. There's clearly something planned here. The straw hat being a symbol of the sun and how it looks like an angelic halo from a lot of angles. We've already talked about how it probably, Luffy, whether or not he was going to literally be a sun god, was probably always meant, and I don't think he was always meant to literally be a sun god, because let's be frank, it really feels like for the first few chapters, Oda is still thinking of the gum fruit the same way he was thinking of it in the original Romance Dawn one-shots, where it's like, it's the fruit of the gum tree. It's the one magic fruit. And it feels like it genuinely took a couple chapters for him to be like, no, it's going to be boring if there's only one fruit. So I don't think originally it was meant to be the Nika fruit. I do think originally it was meant to be very special. And Oda at some point, actually, this is what I think happened, thinking about it. Because they're acting like it's the special devil-cursed fruit of the gum tree. And then after a few chapters, it's like, no, this is one of the devil fruits. And I think what had to happen in Oda's mind was he was like, this is special. How do I keep it being special if there's going to be other fruit? And that's how the idea of it having a secret name happened. Now, I think Luffy was meant to symbolically be a sun god regardless, especially because we begin the story talking about the Eastern Wind. It might be a translation issue, but it's translated the same way, and from what I understand accurately, in the Romance Dawn one-shots. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't have the Japanese and I don't read Japanese. I still think Luffy literally becoming the sun god is fine because he doesn't have sun powers. Sun god is a name given to a god of liberation and the new dawn. I think that's fine to me. I understand the dislike. Anyways, thinking about this, I'm also thinking about now Blackbeard again because of the scars on Shanks' face. And we see Shanks as someone who is carrying on the symbol of the sun and just long enough to pass it on. And we see Ace as the potential other son. And I'm thinking about, like, I think there's going to be something connecting us to Shanks and Blackbeard and Elbaf right now. Sorry, I know this isn't Romance Dawn, but thinking about the symbology early on and Shanks' scar. Yeah, that's why you're right. That's why we're doing it. Think about it, right? Blackbeard gave Shanks the scars. I don't have any idea when, at some point when Shanks is becoming an emperor. But let's think about this, right? Fenrir ate the arm of what's his face? What's the name of the god? Tyr. Fenrir ate Tyr's arm, right? Shanks, people believe, because of a lot of different reasons, is tied to Norse mythology. He probably is meant to be a Tyr-like figure because, you know, by securing the future of the dawn of the world, he lost his arm by betting it on the future of the world. I'm finding myself thinking about the idea that obviously not the son of this Sea King, but Blackbeard being tied into Norse mythology as well now, because we know that Ace was supposed to be the alternate protagonist, the other potential son of this world, and Fenrir's son is the wolf who devours the sun in Norse mythology. And I know we keep talking about, like everybody's talking about Cerberus, but we've already seen Cerberus the demon now. Ace's fruit is the passing of a torch. Also true. There's too much to this. It's killing me. But yeah, Skjold being associated with Blackbeard is suddenly something I'm thinking about. God, sorry, rambly, but like there's so many mythologies you can point to.
What did that have to do with the hat? Did you just go off in a weird... I kept waiting for it to come back. I'm not...
Well, because I was thinking of the hat as a symbol of the sun, and like...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was thinking of the hat of the symbol of sun. I was thinking of Shanks's place representing Norse mythology, kind of being like this Fenrir, this Tyr figure, sorry. What did Tyr do?
Okay, so now I want to say something else. Thinking of this whole Wano thing, when we see Ace learning to weave a hat, and we think about the skills that were involved and how he made it for the continent Polar's son, I think it's also supposed to be giving us clues about a couple of other things, about how it lends strength, and that maybe a person with hockey doesn't know how to put it into things the way that they did then, but you could see how special and personal it was to him, and that Ace put some of his essence into that hat. So I think some of Ace's hockey is still in that dude's hat who died. So now I'm wondering where that hat is.
Yeah. Maybe that first hat wasn't Joy Boy's. Maybe that first hat was the original Nika, the original sun god, the big hat.
That's what I'm thinking it actually is now. Not Joy Boy, but the original Nika. And that it...
God, there's
and
so
now
much.
the question became, who put hockey into that hat? Who wove it?
So, yeah.
Green Entertainer said, so when we see the guy with the eye patch, it will be Odin. Were you not on when I said this? Good God,
That's
Green
true.
Entertainer.
Mama thinks Odin will be Odin. Mama thinks that Yamato will be Odin because we'll be Odin.
My number one thing that I think right now is that underneath Israel, there is 3 wells. And I think the branches of the Israel's roots go so far that some of them are underneath Wano. And I think that, remember when we saw where the ancient thing was kept in Wano, down in that hole of fresh water that people couldn't get to? I think that in the reason why we keep getting shown New Odin, or as I'm calling them, Nodin, the reason we're getting showed their pilgrimage alongside with where we are right now is that Odin is going to eventually become with us. And in their travels, they're going to go under Israel, and they're going to have come to the well where they have to give up their eye in order to get knowledge, because that's part of the Norse mythology, that Odin gave up his eye at one of the wells in order to gain knowledge. And so I think that that's going to happen, and then Odin is going to end up with us with an eye patch on.
I think that's possible. I think the idea of the Odin figure, so I'm looking into Norse mythology more and more, because I think the mythology that Luffy draws the most from is Japanese and maybe Brazilian and Haitian, because there's a talk of Joy Boy, right? Everything about Shanks feels associated with Norse mythology. And now I'm so convinced he's a Tyr figure. And I just want to say, I briefly looked into it. Tyr is killed in Norse mythology by the hound that guards the underworld.
That makes sense.
So if Blackbeard is a Cerberus-like figure, it makes sense that he would represent just the wolves of Norse mythology more broadly. Because guys, there's like 5 significant wolves in Norse mythology. There's so goddamn much. Shamrockstock, maybe Shamrocks is the wolf. Who knows?
And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping Shamrock and not
Blackbeard. It's just when you have characters as tied together as Blackbeard and Shanks, it would feel like such a letdown if they never meet. Like every time Shanks shows up somewhere, he's talking about Blackbeard. There's something in the fact that Odin, the first Odin, is married to Toki, and Toki, holy shit, guys. No, this is incredible. The first Odin is married to Toki and is the person Toki finds, and then Odin's will is carried on by Yamato. I think Mama might be onto something, because think about this. We're so off base from Romance Dawn now, but this is where we're at. We're theory jamming too. Guys, Toki disappeared, similar to an Odin sleep, to carry this will to Odin. pass on to the next Odin, disappeared during the end of the previous world and shows up at the end of that cycle at the end of the next world. Literally like an Odin sleep, jumping from one end of world to the next end of world, inspiring Odin, whose will then, because he gives his life, needs to be carried on to a new Odin. But like, you could absolutely see Toki jumping and carrying that will to Odin as something of an Odin sleep, because it is literally going from one Ragnarok to the next.
Exactly. So now, new Odin, I think, is going to go underneath to the well of knowledge and end up having to sacrifice an eye.
We'll see what up.
We're going to see that our new Odin is going to have a eye patch on, which is going to signal the end of the story.
I'm convinced it's either Luffy or Blackbeard that'll have the eye patch. Whether or not symbolically Odin is Odin.
I'm not done. I'm also convinced it's Odin because I think that then Odin is going to meet us where we are and become our 10th and final member of the crew.
Maybe that's why Page One was torturing the twins. They might have found a route below Wano while traveling with their dad. Weird. VV? Question mark. Okay. If we can drag this back to Romance Dawn.
I don't think it's going to be VV. I think it's going to be Odin. And I think Vivi would be great, but I think Vivi is not going to be necessarily a crew member. I think Vivi is going to be a world player. She's a leader in the world. Her dad is dead. She needs to take over her country. She's in a position of being able to report and coordinate. And I think the person who at the end of their journey, especially once they find knowledge, can become a crew member is Odin. And Odin is also connected to Ace, which brings Luffy's brother into the picture. It is Pandemon.
You have what I would call points.
I'm telling you, I think it's going to be Odin. I think she's going to find her way through the passages under Yggdrasil. She's going to go to Mirmir's well. But it won't be Mirmir. It'll be called, oh my god, maybe she'll do it through a Mirmir world. Mirmir. I really think it's going to be the Mirmir world is going to get us to the underworld under the tree. And that's why it's going to be called the idea of Mirmir's well in the story. And that's how Odin is going to get there and lose their eye. And I think it's just going to be Odin, regardless of the fact that we have somebody who it's supposed to be Thor's uncle, blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be Odin. There's a reason he named that character Odin.
Okay.
And more importantly, can I just say, there's a reason that he not only named a character Odin, who then allowed himself to be boiled for his friends, that a new character took on that same person's name and being and will and renamed themselves Odin to keep that name alive.
Yeah, no, look, I get what you're saying here.
Because otherwise, why would we still need the name Odin?
So I want to talk about something from Romance Dawn real quick. So something that I've noticed. Hockey was planned, right? Now, did Oda know what it was going to be? Did he know it was going to be divided into armament, observation, conquerors? No. But he knew it would be a power system of some sort, which you can see exclusively because of Shanks's glare to the sea monster. Like, you know for a fact, based off of that alone, that he intended it. Now, does that mean it was intended to be in the hat originally? I don't know. I
don't know either.
I don't know. I think I'm on board with you that could be the case now. It's a thing that makes sense. I feel it. However, I don't know if it was intended.
I think he intended it to be protective. I don't know if he thought it was going to be hockey or not, but I think that he intended that it was going to be a protection symbol. And I think now that protection symbol will be woven in hockey, which he made clear when he undid a rope knot.
Look, I'm not saying it's complicated to have it split into the three. What I'm saying is I don't think he had it divided at this point, just based off the way that it's represented with
Which is
Shanks,
why I think it was meant as protection.
So the more I think about it, I think hockey, because hockey are power systems in shonen, power systems in anything should be, I'm going to say should, actually. In shonen, this is usually the case. I love the power systems in Mistborn. They are not a complex representative of something. They don't feel like they have representative virtue. It's not necessary to be a cool power system. But in shonen, usually power systems tend to represent themes. What does Ki represent in Dragon Ball? Hard work and discipline. And Devil Fruits represent imagination and creativity. Hockey represents ambition, will. Now, the word will and ambition feel like they start to take more of a position in this. Early on, though, and this makes sense. Think about this, right? Oda is a mangaka. Eventually, he's an established mangaka. He needs to have this crushing will to keep having the discipline to tell the story the way he's going to. But early on, he wants to be the best-selling mangaka. He wants to be the next Toriyama. How could you have such a lofty dream? All of the conversations early on in One Piece about inspiration and what you can accomplish are about your goals, but they're framed from the idea of dreams instead of ambitions. And then later, as Oda is succeeding in what you'd call a dream, but has yet to reach the completion that would make it feel resolved, I feel as though his perspective on what matters when it comes to accomplishment and success shifts towards ambition and drive. And that's why hockey becomes more what we know it. My reading of this, looking at Romance Dawn, is that hockey was meant to be a power of dreams at first. And as Oda went from being the man who dreams of being the next big mangaka to having quickly having become the next big mangaka, hockey couldn't be just powered by, I have the dream to have this, as he was kind of forced to reckon with. The work goes on beyond that. The work goes on beyond feeling like your dream is realized, because that's not necessarily finishing the quest. Because there's so many conversations that feel like they're elevating the concept of a dream in this. And that kind of dies down in later One Piece to be replaced by will and the world you'll create and what your work will do. So apparently the first big boom in One Piece popularity in Japan was Alabasta, which is where Zoro uses a more concrete version of haki. I think I'm onto something. I think hockey was meant to be dreams at first and became the same concept, but more refined as will, ambition, and drive as Oda became more established, and it became less about is this possible, and more about the drive to follow through. Yes, they're still tied and not inseparable, but I think there's a big difference in the approach, in the framing. They're the same concept. A dream and a will are, in theory, referring to the same thing, but you have to admit, they're a different lens of looking at that thing.
As I went through, I said to myself, dreams were so important in the beginning. Like, I spent so much time talking about a person's dream. I kept mentioning what I think he was implying by dreams. And then all of a sudden we hit Alabasta and that changed. And I really think that you're correct, that he realized, like so many people realize, when you reach your dream, congratulations, you really haven't reached shit. It's keeping that dream. It's what popular people in movies talk about all the time. Like, good for you, you're popular. The harder part is maintaining popularity. Getting there is nothing. Staying there is everything. So I was just thinking, like, he realized he had to do more than dreams. It was an ambition to, once you started to reach your dreams, the ability to balance them and keep them, because that's the hard part.
Hear me out. I'm going to say something maybe controversial.
Do it. Controversy.
Reading this, I don't believe Luffy has always had a secondary ambition.
Interesting. Carry on.
I think at this point, Luffy's ambition was to become king of the pirates. And I think Oda at some point had to do this soul searching we're talking about of, I have become what I wanted. I achieved, in theory, my dream of becoming the big mangaka. I was inspired by Dragon Ball and I wanted to be that, and I did it, and I've done it for a long time. And I think at some point Oda had to reckon with that and realize that having done that, a story about ambition shouldn't be a story about I want to reach a level, because that's not a good goal, really. It has to be about, what do I want to do with that? Because think about Oda now, where his story is so much more philosophically and politically conscious. Now, those themes have always been there, but in the past, in post-time skip, those themes have been so well thought out about the responsibility behind them, about what Luffy's impact on the world really is. We've been seeing Luffy learn what it means to be the big deal, about how thoughtful he needs to be, about the power he wields by just having become great enough to reach this level. And I think that's Oda. I think that's him realizing, I've become huge. I've become such a huge deal that when I do anything, it has this rippling impact on millions of people. And I think where we're at with One Piece is the theme has had to shift, because Oda's had to kind of cotton with, if your dream is to become great, you are going to make such waves, such wake, that all of your smaller ambitions and decisions, whether you care about it or not, are affecting everyone around you. That's Luffy's revelation, or that's Luffy's flaw we see at the end of Dressrosa, that he finally resolves at the end of Wano. deciding I don't want to be responsible, I don't want to be important, I just want to be great. Greatness comes with importance. And Oda realizes this, and suddenly this can't be a story about wanting to reach the top. This has to be a story about what do I do with that? And now One Piece is no longer a story with the goal of being the big manga. It's a story with the goal of doing something great with being the next big manga. I think I'm cooking here.
I think you are too, but I think he actually says these goals early on. In the very beginning of it, there is a scene where all of Shank's crew are in the bar and they're lined up and they go, "Calm down, Luffy. Let's just have a good time. Yeah, pirates always have a good time. The sea is vast and there's lots of islands to explore. And best of all, pirates have freedom." And that shows the early ambition of Luffy when he's just like, all he can think about when he first goes out is, I just want all the freedom. That's all I care about. That's all that matters. But then almost immediately after, and this is something interesting because this is something that we talked a little bit where she talked about the will of sons in our current arc. Yep. And how there's so many sons and fathers and blah, blah, blah. And how you can admire somebody and want to be like them, but you will, and I said, but you won't be them because whether you like it or not, your own personality will shine through. The way that Usopp admires his father so much and wants to be just like him and becomes a pirate because of that. But on the other hand, he still brings in his cowardiceness and has to overcome that in him. So Luffy wants to take on all of these people's words. And then it shows in one of the next panels that then Luffy finds out that there's more to it, that you're not just going to get to be the freest. You're also going to have to put your body in front of people and protect people. And so Luffy realizes like being a pirate and having great ambition and great strength and achieving greatness doesn't mean that suddenly you're just out there on your own doing whatever the shit you want. It comes with great power comes great responsibility. But then Luffy shows it in his way and how he's going to do it in the future immediately. Because we go to these panels. We see Luffy with his little buddy. Sorry, I'm just finding the panels because I just literally wait a minute. Let me do this.
Oh, by the way, can I just say, it's great to see Koby again and know what he accomplishes.
Oh my god, I was like, Koby, I missed you.
Because the last time I looked back at the early One Piece, it was before Egghead because it was watching the live action. So it was before Koby had become him. Koby is him now.
So cool.
Oh god, reading this and seeing Koby was just like, oh my god, my little guy.
So first, Luffy says something terrible to the what's-her-face, and then Koby said, no, don't do that, Luffy. After Luffy had taught him the whole thing about how Luffy doesn't care if he dies in the chasing and fulfillment of his dreams, he doesn't care. And then he goes, don't say that, Luffy. You're going to get hurt. You need to take that back right now. Hurry up. And then Luffy was like, no. And then he goes, I think you need to take it back. And then he goes, no, I think you are. He stops and he goes, Lady Alvida is. And then he thinks about Luffy saying, I'm going to be the king. Even if I die trying, then at least I tried. Lady Alvida is the ugliest old hag of all. And then he sticks by it. And then what happens? And he said, it is better to risk my life trying to achieve my dream. I'll join the Navy and then I'll capture Alvida. And then she has a little spaz and Luffy jumps in front. She smashes him and he says that didn't hurt. So here's when I was reading that, what I was thinking, and now I'm tying it into what you're saying. I think Oda almost kind of had this foresight of his life, like what happens when you become the biggest and greatest. If you don't empower others on the way, if you don't realize that you just being in a place of power isn't enough, but Luffy is going to bring his Luffiness into the idea of Shank's protection. So he immediately, we find out, Luffy's not just going to stand in front of Koby and immediately do everything for him. Koby has to have his own action and agency prior to him doing it.
Koby this whole time wouldn't have become as great as he did if not for all these moments we're seeing where Luffy empowers him. You were totally right.
But I think that the reason is because right in the beginning, Luffy didn't know this about himself, but he was going to be the type of pirate and leader who, once he got to the top and saw that it was ambition, was going to understand that if you left weak people behind you, if you truly want freedom and you don't want to be attached to everything, then you're going to have to strengthen the people behind you. And so his ambition was going to have to include building people up.
Yep, I think we do see that here. So I think you're right that my statements made it seem like Oda doesn't have enough of an appreciation, doesn't have as much of an appreciation for who Luffy needs to be along the way, that it's just about ambition. It definitely isn't. And we're seeing a ton of that already, that he wants to liberate people internally, that he wants to free them from their internal restrictions by telling Zoro that, hey, other people aren't as honorable as you. You need to live for your dreams. By telling Koby, hey, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to follow your dreams and be willing to be my enemy, which I'm going to say, that brings me on to something important. I think you might disagree with me here, but the scene where Luffy bullies Koby into punching him makes me love so much more the scene where Koby says he's going to have to take Luffy's dream, because that's Koby. That's Koby following through on what Luffy taught him. That's Koby following through.
I absolutely hate that you mentioned that, but at the same time, you had to. As I was reading that, I had the same thought, because I already told you how much I hate that, but I knew as soon as I read that, I was like, he has to say that, because that's a culmination of their friendship from the beginning when Luffy got him in.
No, if you're saying Koby's a traitor, I want you to read this fucking book. You go back to volume 1 and suddenly Koby, I was torn on it where I'm like, I'm sad about this, but it's empowering for Koby. Now I'm fully on board.
No, it's not. Luffy intentionally goats him into punching him in the face so that they won't be seen as friends. Everyone knew he was doing it intentionally. It was bad acting. They even said it. But at the same point, he was informing Koby about how their villainous relationship of being enemies was going to work in the future, even though he said, we will always still be friends.
We're always going to be friends, but you have to be my enemy to achieve your dream, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this.
And because you need to achieve your dream, and it's for a dream, it is what it is.
Yep, it was...
I hate it.
Genuinely, if you reread volume 1, it makes Koby saying, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you, Luffy. It makes that scene so fucking hard, because you go, oh shit. You hate that scene, but you have to admit, this changes it.
It changes it because it makes you go like, look, come on. It was destined. He wrote it. It was in the stars from the beginning. You can't deny it.
It was so set up, the idea of, hey, Koby, I know we have to be enemies, and I'm going to make you realize that.
And I even said it. I said it in the second or first one. I said, when it said, but little did he know he was going to leave one thing behind. And I said, yeah, that thing is Koby. And Koby is going to do the biggest thing ever to him later on, and he's going to deeply regret it. And I still say that is the thing. The one mistake he made was Koby, and Koby is going to become a super problem soon.
I mean, Koby is already a huge big deal.
You remember that phase when he says it? Because it depressed the shit out of me, because I had the exact thought as you.
Oh God, I'm so excited for how that's going to come to fruition. Everything about this makes me appreciate Koby's character more, because Oda so clearly knew where he wanted to go with Koby, because we see Koby as a person who's going out of his way to be selfless and save others, who's risking his own life to protect people around him. Oh my God, think about this. I think Koby's biggest inspiration, the moment that changed Koby the most, there's two things here. Seeing everyone in the town freak out, not just when Zoro's mentioned, but when Morgan is mentioned, and seeing the Marines cheer when Morgan's defeated. Because I think those were the moments that taught him.
I also think, more importantly, seeing that they were about to shoot themselves and that they were taking orders from somebody in high power who was giving orders that pirates would give.
And realizing that, like, Marines aren't inherently good, but they should be. That you should trust authority. You should trust authority, not in the way that if you're a good person, you'll trust authority, but in that authority should deserve your trust.
Yeah, exactly.
I think these moments shaped who Koby is,
And as much as Honesty Impact is a really dumb goddamn attack name, it's actually kind of cool. Because
Honesty Impact!
Because Garp's big attack is Galaxy Impact. And it's Garp saying, I am everything. I am the fist of the universe. I am power itself. Whereas Koby's is about what drives him, which is people with power, people with authority, people who are responsible for the lives of others should be one thing above everything else. Honest. You should know what we're doing. We should be living for you. The strong should be serving others. Rereading this has hyped up Koby more than anything to me because Oda's delivering on these few chapters so well for that kid.
I can say that Koby is kind of mid when you first meet him, and he's just a character that you're meeting for the sake of kind of showing who Luffy is and how he acts.
Yes.
And showing that he's going to force people to take agency over their life in order to protect them.
Which is important.
That he is going to care for people no matter what side they're on, as long as they are people who are good. But in the rereading of it, suddenly you realize with all the places that you saw Koby get to, and then you see him as a young boy again, you realize Koby is going to have a huge place in this overall manga, that he's going to come in strong in the end. Unfortunately, it's going to be against Luffy and he may be successful, and that his character is so much more important and so much more interesting than you thought it was. And I'm looking forward. Somebody said they were looking forward to his glow up.
You know who else gets a bit of hype here? For real, for real?
Who?
Helmeppo.
Okay, it's like, I hate Helmeppo. And
I love Helmeppo.
Daddy!
He sucks here.
But on the other hand, you really do see how much he changed based upon how much he sucks.
But I want to highlight it more because I think Oda does such a fantastic job of recognizing the state he introduces a character in to produce the best impact on reread. This is incredible. Think about this, right? So Koby's a character who we see all of his inspirations. We see where he gets his strength. We see what he decides he doesn't want to be. We see Luffy teach him what he has to be to resolve his dreams. And all of that has come to resolution. What do we see of Helmeppo? We see someone who's insecure, whose identity comes from his father, whose father thinks he's pathetic and doesn't mind him using his name. Why? Because it kind of just shows how great Morgan is, that his name alone is enough for Helmeppo to get away with shit because it flexes on him. He doesn't like his son, but he lets his son abuse his name because it speaks highly of him to have that much power. Helmeppo is someone who doesn't care about anything other than having status here.
Also because it also puts eyes out into the world.
Yeah.
When people know that Helmeppo is his son, people know that that is like an extension of one of his fingers.
Yeah.
And that it's out in the world taking the pulse.
It's active authority. It's passive authority, actually. Sorry. So it's his authority being extended, right? So hear me out, right? Helmeppo is someone who just wants status and position and importance without work. And Helmeppo, by the time they've come to save Koby, is someone who is okay being a background player, who's getting the shit kicked out of him, who's protecting, who doesn't care about status. He's not complaining like Groose is that Koby's getting the attention. He doesn't care about it. All he cares about is putting in the work to do a good job. He's entirely, I'm tearing up here. He's entirely changed. He's gone from someone who's no work, all status to, I don't fucking care about the status. I don't need the accolades because I've seen the work this man puts in. He deserves it. He is greatness and he doesn't even care. So I am going to do everything I can to let my boy shine. I'm going to protect him. He is going to make it and I will make sure of that. And he's at his best protecting Koby's ambition and protecting his boy.
And Green Entertainer made a good point about Helmeppo being Koby's Usopp because he talks big about himself, looked up to his screwed up dad, followed him through perilous adventures, and is now a true friend willing to stand up to authority for him. But also, and somebody said, and also kind of Zoro. And that's true, but they also have a unique friendship, and it is kind of a Zoro because they were both on different sides of the fence. Like originally, Koby.
I would say more Zoro than Usopp. I think Zoro is the one I'm feeling more, but yeah.
Because originally we have Koby as a pirate and not as a government person, and so there's kind of a switch over there too, which makes it more interesting for them. But they also have a unique relationship in that they saw each other at their weakest in a way that like you might say like, oh yeah, all the Straw Hats saw themselves at their weakest, but they were never weak.
No.
Koby has just begun sticking up for himself. He's done 2 tiny things to stick up for himself that is going to put him on the pathway to his dreams, but they're tiny. And Helmeppo is a whiny little snot baby.
He's done nothing for his dreams. He's been is a leech of his dad's status.
And so they have a unique friendship in that they meet each other at their weakest, most pathetic, and they grow as men together.
God, dude. Like, obviously, Koby is the more impressive person by the end, but I still think Helmeppo, because Helmeppo didn't have a Luffy. Helmeppo didn't have someone work to build him up and change him as a person. He just was inspired by Koby enough to be like, nah, we in this.
And I think we're going to see some more growth in Helmeppo in future places, but I think that they have become powerhouses together, and that because of that, their friendship has a lot of layers that as readers we might not see at first, because when you've been your weakest with someone and you've grown, you know what that person's bottom looked like, so you appreciate their top in a much deeper way, and you appreciate their journey to getting where they got in a much deeper way. Like, they are brothers.
I also think of it the way I think of the crew, where you talked about how being inspired by Robin changed the crew. And I read that once Hockey was revealed, I was able to tell you, you've tapped into something, because that's got to be them able to increase Hockey by carrying each other's dreams and the burden of each other's ambition. And that's Helmeppo and Koby, where Koby, Honesty Impact didn't come from him alone. It came from the fact that he was the one who could carry the ambitions of every freed slave, of Garp's dreams for him, and of every Marine on that boat. And why was Helmeppo at his strongest protecting Koby? Because he was carrying Koby's will to carry those dreams. He was carrying Koby's will in that moment. God damn, dude.
Yeah, and so you can see that when you do the rereading, like all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, these characters are going to be so much more important. They have to be, because this setup is a lot more detailed than we thought when we read it as first times.
Yep.
It is in the rereading where you see how deeply he wrote.
But it feels like, to me, it's both, because I don't think Oda was at his best yet. I think he's obviously better at this point than he was when he wrote Monster, where that was like, good but very plain writing, very like to the point. But I think the thing that's best here is that every time he comes back to a character, I think he probably returns briefly to recheck in how they were introduced, to think about how to most effectively write that. Because to me, I don't think he in this moment necessarily imagined all of the things Helmeppo and Koby would be, because they're tied into elements of the world building that didn't exist back then. But I do absolutely believe that he referred back to this and was like, how do I get the most out of this for people who dig into this series? What was their introduction?
2 things there, because I agree with you that as I'm going back, I'm like, did you reread what you wrote and realize that it could go off in this direction? And you were like, oh my God. But I also think he really did. I really think he meant that the friendship of Koby wasn't a mistake, but leaving him behind as a Marine was a mistake. That it would become one of their greatest downfalls because Koby is going to blow up.
I agree. The narrator said it. The narrator doesn't say shit that often in this series.
Exactly. That's what I said. When he said but what they didn't know is they had made one of their greatest mistakes. And I think obviously we are all led to believe that is the greatest mistakes. And for that reason, he knew that Koby was going to become something very, very important. But he obviously might not have known exactly where that was going to take place. But the fact that he took Helmeppo along for that ride and gave him a blood brother was pretty brilliant. Okay, I want to go off in a new direction. Are we ready for it?
I am so ready for it. I'm just glad that we gave Helmeppo and Koby their time, because the boys deserve it. Going back to this, oh God, them kids.
I so agree, because I don't think we gave them very much time in the original when we were reading. Like,
we didn't give Romance Dawn any time. Our first episode was mostly Baratier. We barely talked about Romance Dawn, Orange Town, or Seared Village. We literally
just breezed through Romance Dawn as if it was just a thing that occurred at some point.
I think you talked about it more than I wanted to, because I didn't remember it being as significant as it clearly is.
You also saw the anime, and I had read it. And when I went back and I watched the anime, because I've watched Romance Dawn as an anime now, it does not get this impact. It is missing so many pieces.
It's missing Koby being shot. It's missing Morgan killing his men and ordering them to kill themselves. It's missing Morgan ordering
ordering the little girl be
Does
killed.
he tell them to kill the little girl? I can't remember.
I don't believe he does. There's so much of the brutality missing. I don't think the anime is always a worse version of the story. I think there are times where it does a good job. But that being said, yeah, Romance Dawn. I also think as much as a ship is a more interesting battleground, I think that the fight with Alvida taking place on an island was better.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna say, when I saw her shack with her flag on it, and how we now know that pirates have islands they specifically go back to and leave their stuff,
Yeah.
and because their Jolly Roger is on it, is left alone, it changes the face of what pirating looks like. People are terrified when she leaves.
It also shows that Koby has been thinking of a way to leave by building his own dinghy really badly. But it shows like it's an embodiment of his dream being shoddy and secretive and weak. And Luffy strengthens the dream to give me a goddamn boat.
And then the fact that Alvida was able to come onto the land, see this shit boat that Koby had said that he had spent 2 years building in secret in the back, and she comes in and with one beat of her club destroys it on land to make it clear that he will go, be, and do what she tells him to, because she will make sure that he doesn't have the ability to have free movement. And to be able to stop moving somebody from place to place and be able to strand them on an island becomes a massive, massive theme of One Piece. So hear me out. It absolutely ties into what I was about to say.
Okay, I'm excited. Hit me up.
So we have Shanks out in the water, and the giant sea creature eats his arm.
Yep, I do remember that. Making him our tier figure, as was briefly discussed.
And what is the sea creature called? What is it?
A
sea king.
It was Lord of the Coast, I think, is that one specifically, but sea kings is what the species are called.
Yes, but it's a member of the Sea King family. And then later, Luffy is like, okay, I'm off to finally make my way in this awesome world and being a pirate.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yay, good for you, Luffy. And as he's leaving in his little boat, let me just get to chapter 5. He's like leaving in his little boat and he sees, my God, is it all the way back in like chapter 3? This man does so much in so little fucking time.
I mean, before he had 1,300 named characters to manage, the man was efficient with his panels.
But it's not just even that. Like, it's chapter 2 he does this thing, and for me it felt like it must have been so late in the story and blah blah blah. Oh my God, I'm lying to you. Even I'm a liar who lies. It's chapter goddamn 1.
I mean, chapter 1 is like 50 pages, right?
No, it's only 54. Why are you going off?
Okay, so more than the numbers I said. Understood. A larger number objectively.
A larger objective number than the amount of numbers that you originally said. So here's what he says. He says, dang it. Our local sea monster. Sorry I have to do this, but there's an attack I've been perfecting since last time we met. Gum pistol. Punches him in the face. That's what you get, you darn fish. And then I was like, what do you mean your local sea monster? That's nonsense. And then I realized if you keep the majority of the Sea Kings in the calm zone, that's where they have babies. That's where they're kept if you need them. You can release them when you want. And you pull out a sea monster for every region so that if you try to leave and you don't have the proper authority, or you're just a person trying to move island to island, get to know things, create relationships between different islands, if every island has a Sea King there keeping you from leaving, what an effective method.
So are you thinking Poseidon was controlled by the 20?
Maybe. And I think that they created sea monsters that are the quote unquote just the local sea monster, which is ridiculous. And we see local sea monsters again later on. And so we see this idea of keeping people trapped in the place that they're from so nobody is a traveler.
I know that I said this about hockey hat theory, and then I came back and was like, fuck, hockey hat theory might be entirely correct. However, allow me now to say, I think you're crazy.
Okay, so let me tell you why.
Please go on.
Before you think I'm crazy, and it doesn't necessarily have had to, but I think it would have been put there by somebody in the beginning. Now keep this.
Do you know when we have guests, how often we're going to have to take a pause to be like, pause, we both think you're insane before you can pitch and try to explain yourself?
I'm going to enjoy the living shit out of that.
So often, me and guests are going to have to be like, you're insane. Please elaborate.
If you can travel throughout the world using those pentacircles that were in the offices of the Grorsi, and you have
the Grorsi?
you know who I mean.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to move throughout times and to force things to do what you want, then one of the smartest things you could do in a world where you were trying to raise the sea level and create boundaries between people would to be to put sea monsters within different territories to control the movement of the people. And that means if you had someone who, say, wanted to become a reporter on their own and couldn't fly above them and didn't have government helping them to work things, then one of the very best things you could do is stick sea kings there, because people like Luffy who don't have the ability to beat them up would be like, well, fuck it, I'm stuck here. Also, and more importantly, the only people who would be on the water able to control the passageways would be the government, except for if one group of people said, F you, and became pirates and managed to navigate and get the weaponry that they needed to work together to fight against the Sea Kings if they fought back at you. Normal people, we don't see going out to sea. We see them fishing within inlets. We see them doing small things next to the coast, but we don't see them traveling place to place. The only people we see doing that other than the government is the pirates, and it would explain why the pirates became a thing. If there are dangerous monsters at the ports and openings of all the islands, even in East Blue. And so you have to have a group of people who have the weaponry, the manpower, the experience to move place to place and fight against the Sea Kings. The Sea Kings being put at all these islands actually becomes one of the greatest methods of controlling the normal populace from having movement on the planet.
I'm looking at the mural right now, our version, and I see normal people by the Noah. We've talked in the past about how we believe it's possible that when the Lunarians were in charge, they modified people to make fishmen, and that's why they exist. I do kind of wonder if, looking at it, we see what looks like Zhao, Skypeans, and possibly the future merfolk, possibly just people, but the merfolk could be represented by the Ark Noah, which is down by Zhao, what we believe is Zhao. Is it possible that it was more than just Zhao that sided with Imu and did things for him and then came to regret it? That perhaps more of the D clan joined with Imu out of desperation. Maybe Joy Boy was lost or imprisoned and he was like, I'll help you out. God, can you imagine if that came back and we got an arc without Luffy where Blackbeard was like, I'll team up with you, Straw Hats. I also want to break into Marie Joie.
Yeah, it's possible.
And Luffy has been kidnapped like 17 times.
I need you to think about this for a minute, because it's something that I've been on for a hot minute since I started reading this one again. He normalizes the existence of Sea Kings immediately, and then we only see different types of Sea Kings, including Moo Moo, Cowface, and other things like that at some other ports. And you got to keep in mind that one of the things that I said very first in this is how much that if you want to win a war against people, you separate them. The very best way to take over is to separate people and allow them to create friendships and alliances. So how do you keep that happening? You put guardians, giant freaking prison guards. You're on an island. You don't even know you're in prison. You're on an island and you just think, unfortunately, in our world, there's Sea Kings and they stop us from traveling and they will eat your goddamn arm or kill you. And that just is what it is. Even the Great Shanks, it showed, had his bloody arm bitten off because he forgot that the Sea King was there and was just like, he tried to save Luffy. He alone wasn't enough to stop himself from getting injured. They're so powerful and so big. Even the Great Shanks had his arm eaten off.
Now, I stand by that he might have just let it happen to teach Luffy a better lesson, but
it could be, but
the point stands either way. The point doesn't require that he lost the fight for it to work.
Sea Kings are powerful enough that they're going to keep the average person from traveling that far off the coast. And they also create the necessity for a group of people who aren't just the controlling populace to create their own society. And that is pirates. Why would you need pirates? Sea Kings.
It also speaks to his theory, Oda's political theory that under oppression, freedom requires strength, that acting freely is an act that requires strength and conviction and strength of, honestly, just strength of might.
that in an oppressive system, you can't just piece your way into being able to do things. It ties into his seeming beliefs for the world that he instructs, that strength is a requirement of freedom.
And I also think when you looked at the Sea King, it almost seemed if it had this angry face that the Sea Kings inside the Calm Belt didn't have. And so it started to make me think about the Calm Belt, the kings that are taken out, is there something put upon them so that they become vicious, so that they're changed in some way, so that they become angry and they will just defend the territory and kill anyone who tries to go over. That they become a prison guard. I have a piece of evidence to prove it.
Okay, please, madam, please.
So then when I was like, is this far-fetched? I was like, Momo could talk to the Sea
No,
Kings.
that's a Pokemon.
Momo can talk to the Sea Kings. Luffy can hear them. Can he understand them? I don't know.
Shirahoshi can talk to them. Do we know if Momo can?
Shirahoshi can talk to them, blah, blah, blah. Then I was like, okay, so there are people throughout time who've been able to communicate with them, and they probably weren't always this violent. And at one time, they helped one of the sides, and I think they pulled the arc. And then I was like, okay, so why are they doing this? Well, they could have been changed. They could have been made to be angry or had not a spell, but something cast upon them. And then I was like, would anyone do this as a way to protecting their coast? And then I was like, well, Oda always gives a hint in another way to show us a larger picture. I don't know, like all the made up Sea Kings in front of Egghead Island that were protecting his coast.
I think why I believe in this is I don't think Sea Kings are natural creatures. We see island whales be referred to as a species, and they are shown to have multiple of them. They have familial units. They are sometimes younger. They are sometimes older. That is an animal. Sea Kings are these vastly varied, grotesque monsters of bizarre shape and obscene size. Seemingly, they're not that hungry. They're not hunting. How would the world sustain them? Same with Zhao. We never see Zhao eat, even though giant elephant. We don't see any two Sea Kings look alike was my next point. Yes. I think some of the sea monsters are normal animals like island whales, but I think the true Sea Kings are supernatural beings pulled out of hell by Emu when he took over. We've already talked about this before, that we think mythical creatures. Hey, if you're watching the series and you're like, what the hell is he talking about? We believe some crazy stuff about One Piece, but we have evidence. Please watch our videos about the mural. We talk about it constantly. But I believe that they are mythical creatures the same way Cerberus was, the mythical beast that was pulled out. I think they represent Nidogor. Nidogor being sea serpents that circle the world. Calm Belt is effectively Nidogor of Norse myth, the same way that I believe Jormungandr is the Red Line. I'm crazy. Yeah. I might sound insane to you, but that's why I think Mama could be onto something, because I don't think these are natural animals. I think the reason they can communicate intelligently with someone of a lineage is because they're not animals. They are mythological creatures that are able to be pulled from what is now being referred to as the abyss, which, just to briefly summarize what the insane shit me and Mama have come to talking about the mural and why you should watch it, I think the abyss is a world of dreams and spirits that is housed in the roots of the Sun Tree and Treasure Tree. Am I crazy? Watch Mural Piece and decide for yourself.
We have also learned that just like the people of Neptunia, how two creatures, they tried to explain that to us, two creatures who look very different from each other will have a baby that is a different kind of underworld sea creature.
That is also true.
I am telling you right now that when Oda had us come to Egghead Island and had those sea beasts there, Oda was saying, hey...
We've talked about it. Everything Mads does is meant to be a hint about the people of the past.
Exactly.
So
that is why when we go to Egghead Island, which is why I was asking you to think about it for a moment, that is showing us what happened in the past, and that is why Sea Kings are prison guards of all the islands, making sure there isn't traveling between people where they're allowed to compare, create friendships and companions.
Oh God, dude.
And come up with plans.
Don't hit me up like this. This is crazy. This is crazy shit.
As I was reading the romance Dawn, I was like, God damn, Oda, you told us way back then, all of us should have been questioning, why is there a goddamn sea monster here? And then when we met the Sea Kings for the first time, all of us should have been saying, wait a minute, that looks very familiar to the thing that bit off Shank's arm. And then when we saw him intentionally use all the Sea King things in front of Egghead, we all should have been like,
Oh.
oh.
I agree with so much of what you're saying. I think they were put together like this for sure.
Yes, sea
Sea
stone
stone works against devil fruits, but also
works
is used to
against
hide
devil
from sea
fruit
kings. Interesting.
and sea kings because they're both made of the same thing. They both come from the same place.
They both come from the abyss, the void.
The void.
Davy Jones' locker. Dude, I think we're cracking something. I think however the Sea Kings were made, Sea King essence was spliced into the fish people. That's why they are all different types of fish. I think they got Sea King essence, and that's why their princess can inherit the gene.
I think you're right about that as well, Drawk, because one of the reasons that you might be very afraid of a Sea King and why you very racist against the people who were mermen and mer people is because if you inbreed them or splice their genes with Sea Kings, and we know how powerful Sea Kings are, you need to be more afraid. They talk about the strength of the mer people and their abilities and their hockey. Well, of course they're afraid because the Sea Kings are some of the most terrifying creatures of the planet. They use them as prison guards.
Have you thought about how when we have guests on, we're going to sound like crazy people?
You just said that you're going to sit there and poke fun of me with another guest, and I might have to prove you.
I will, and then I'm going to say shit about hell.
Hear me out.
Hearing you out.
Where is the only place that is known to craft? Okay, even
what are you about to do? What are you about to do? Known to craft sea prism is Wano, right? Is that where we're going?
Yes, but it's going to sound crazy. I'm just going to connect a few things. Okay.
Hey,
can I?
Why is Wano the place known to craft special sun god hats and also poneglyphs and also sea prism stone?
Exactly. So
that actually means something. Holy fuck!
Exactly. So listen to me.
Fun, but we're going insane instead.
Okay, so once I realized that Sea Kings are prison guards for islands to keep people from moving place to place in all the world.
Yeah, Sea Kings are prison guards. We're starting at the normal, easy to accept position that everyone agrees with, right?
Everyone agrees with this.
Everyone agrees this is normal and reasonable.
And Wano is the only known place that crafts sea stone, sea prism tools and nails and handcuffs and things on the reg. And the Marines get a source somewhere. But Wano is a closed nation, so it implies that the world government doesn't trade with them in that way anymore. And then we get a hint about the geological and thematic things in Wano with its structure, about how it's floating kind of above a volcano or an Idrisil well area, and that it's connected to the ancient technology underneath, because we know about the crafted poneglyphs.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. Where are you right now? I'm sorry. Where?
So I think that Wano was obviously the technological and cultural hub of the old will, and the first to use and mine prism stones,
or at least of the groups that joined the D clan.
Yes.
Maybe they were artisans for the ancient kingdom who rebelled. Hard to say at this point.
That they have secret craftsmanship and controlled knowledge for not just the sea prism, but their blacksmith, the High Tetsu, have a lineage that controls...
Oh my god, swords with hockey in it. Most of them are Japanese shape. So they also are better at... They're better at imbuing hockey into things, which is probably how the poneglyphs were made indestructible, was by being filled with hockey. And you need... Ryo flowing hockey is a technique that's seen as basic armament because they're not as good as observation in Wano, because they combine observation into armament to refer to it as Ryo, where you read the breadth of things around you.
You are the only person I would let finish my ideas, but I'm still going to beat you. So I think Pluton is powered and protected by sea prism stones, that it comes from Wano. That's why we see Pluton still there.
You keep saying something that convinces me, and then you say more insane shit that makes me have to stop and question you.
And yet I'm right. And we've seen the way that they are built. And so I think on this voyage, the reason that even though we are where we are and we're still seeing Odin's voyage is Yamato or Odin's voyage, is because they are going to gain some of this secret information. That's why they're going to give up their eye, because that information comes from Wano. The only place that has the ability to infuse hockey into swords, the only place where they have all the technological ability to create poneglyphs in the past and still have the ability to do so, the only place where you commonly source sea stone. And so they are going to be the link between the past and the future, moving us forward.
I stand by that
Everything you say makes sense except for Yamato losing an eye and being both Odin and Odin.
Because they are going to go into the bottom world. I don't think it's necessarily going to be through Mirror Fruit, and then it will be from Mirror. But think about it. Who's there right now? Thank you for asking. It's Big Mom. We don't know if she's dead. We know she went way down to the bottom.
My guy.
So where are her goddamn children going to come? That's a great question.
Haki carrying on dreams was planned. Haki carrying on dreams was planned. The hat being passed to Luffy in a flashback, and then we see a sword from Wano. Straw hat weaving was a technique from Wano, and we see a sword from Wano handed to Zoro to carry on a dream in the same volume.
Which is why he was right to keep Wano closed, and which is why this pilgrimage is going to end up having our
and Japan believes in objects' ability to carry on the stories of their owners.
Precisely.
So of course the Japan country would be the one who can infuse objects with Haki.
Yes. So now if Big Mom is there and her daughter comes there to help her, and we have the Mirror Fruit, I think that Odin is going to use Mirror Fruit to go to one of the fountains of knowledge, find some of this hidden lost knowledge that came from Wano, and then we're going to find out that one of the things that they were mining in that picture was sea stone. And some of it is out there, but there's sea prism, but there isn't a ton out there because we're always told it's super rare, it's hard to get, it's hard to work, blah, blah, blah. But the people who seem to have a lot of it, Wano, because it was being mined from under them, the floating volcanic island, connecting it to Yggdrasil's roots.
Do you want to hear a crazy theory?
Oh no, I hate crazy theories. I don't know if you just heard my rampage. I'm not into them.
What if the reason that volcanic stuff is magic in this world, like the light painters and the volcanic pyrocyblin or whatever that makes sky islands possible, sea prism, all of that is linked to volcanoes? What if all of that is because the molten world that we live in One Piece, the molten core of the One Piece world of the Blue Planet, is filled with the roots of the trees. The abyss is there, which is why there's souls and magic and dreams. This sounds insane, but I want everyone to think about this. All of the magical substances we have in this world, other than like dials and pop greens, I guess, seems to be tied into volcanic activity.
If you have Yggdrasil being so important in being the tree of life, and the reason why the things they're taking up from the ground are power sources is because it could be literally volcanic activity that creates the mother flame.
I still stand by it's the power of souls and will itself. It's the dream power, it's demon power.
Well, you know that I started with it being dead people, blah, blah, blah. We talked about it. And it's not that I don't agree with the old theory.
But geothermal energy would be a very good metaphor for reliable, like if you want an environmental message, it being a metaphor for geothermal energy is actually a really good idea. You're saying sea stone is magic? Yes. And it's rare because sea levels rose? Sort of. I think, but volcanoes, so...
But also, if you were a person, say an emu type person who was trying to divide people, control, get rid of past information, didn't want people to have access to something that was able to allow them to pass through the calm belt and get by all the other prison guards of islands who are also serpents, then you wouldn't want them to be allowed to get sea stones, which would be easy to get if, say, a country was open, or B, the whole world wasn't so much ocean. So by raising the ocean levels, turning things into islands, making it difficult to get place to place, and then putting out sea kings as prison guards and making it impossible for you to mine sea stones now, what a great way to control people.
I want to pitch something to you that I'm now realizing. Hey, do you want to be crazier? Do you want to keep getting crazier? I want to point out, we have talked about Romance Dawn today. I don't want anyone to say we're not, but this is a multifaceted quest. The quest of going back through One Piece has two purposes: to deeply appreciate each arc for what it is and to find the goddamn One Piece. And that's going to require jumping off of each arc to be insane.
Each arc is going to take us on a tin hat journey.
Yep. Now, you don't like the power this gives Sakazuki? Holy shit, that's cool actually to think about. I love that this gives
so much power.
That actually would be so cool if magic in this world comes from magma and it's full of souls. And he killed Ace. He killed the sun. And the sun in this world, fire represents souls too. He's just the mother of souls. He's the mother of, oh God, that's actually so cool. The stocks. Okay, guys, hear me out on something. I want everyone to think about something here. If I am theorizing already that in this arc, Shanks is our Tyr, giving his hand to save humanity for the dawn of the new world, for the sun to rise. Tyr is killed by the guardian wolf of the underworld, sure. But I want you to think about this. If I'm right about the abyss, we know the abyss exists. If it's the underworld in this world, and I'm right, Mama's right too, we both talked about this, we are right. Team Drawk is right, that souls and dreams, creatures of myth, of belief, and dreams reside in the abyss. Let's think about it. Sucking things up. We've seen that it's a void you can travel through. Storing objects. Choking out someone's devil fruit powers. All of that sounding pretty abyss-like to me based off of all the little connecting branches we're making in our theory web.
Okay, so wait. Your theory is that Blackbeard's thing is that he is the void.
He is the abyss, or the god of the abyss, or the guardian of the abyss.
He is the void sentry. Someone like him exists who pulled it all away.
Guys, we're crazy. We're crazy people. Don't listen to us. Listen to us. Don't listen.
Whatever you do, don't, but do listen.
Because here's the thing. The rest of these, we're going to be a little bit more hinged because we're going to have guests. We're going to be more focused on the arc and finding clues. Then our plan is we are every 3 or 4, depending on when we think we need to, we're going to do Tinfoil Talk, which is a stream where we just go over all the clues we've examined and we're going to lay it out on the table and do some theorizing. Any guest from those prior streams can show up if they want, but the goal is just going to be hanging out, getting to the bottom of the clues that we had access to. Right? This makes sense to everybody. You all agree that this makes sense.
Together, we are chaos. Yeah. So anyways, somebody like Blackbeard could be the void. And what fits in the void? Everything. How could he be multiple things? He could be multiple people. He could be people within the void.
Well, but also, if he is the abyss is where the devil fruits come from. Of course he can have more than one. He is the rules of the abyss. Or maybe it's Guardian. Maybe he will be Cerberus, and we're going to find out that you can have the real devil and the devil fruit. Maybe the devil fruit. Wait a minute. I think you can have both, I'm realizing. We see Vegapunk, without getting rid of a devil fruit, able to recreate one. We see the box able to give demonic powers. We see demonic powers infused in the Minks and Lunarians. It doesn't need to take from the abyss the actual thing. The Lunarians probably gain the ability to copy the powers of the abyss into their fruit. There probably is a real sun god in the abyss, and Luffy has the fruit of the sun god. And my reason for thinking that is just that we've seen from Vegapunk the ability to recreate things, right?
Yeah.
So I think he could have a Cerberus fruit, and in being Cerberus, represent 3 separate wolves of Norse mythology, one the guardian of the underworld, one the killer, the devourer of the sun, and then, I don't know, Odin's dog. Odin has a couple wolves, so maybe one of those, because by being Cerberus, he could be all 3. And having seen the real Cerberus, I don't think that's ruled out because we've seen Vegapunk recreate devil fruits, which means I think you could create devil fruits and not take the demon itself out of hell. By being 3 separate wolves, or by being Cerberus, he can be 3 wolves of Norse mythology, because Norse mythology has a wolf who kills a Tyr, a wolf chained by Tyr, and a wolf who devours the sun. And we've already seen him be the darkness that swallows the sun when he clashed with Ace, and Ace's final attack was a sun against the ball of darkness.
3 is the wholeness. It's the beginning, middle, and end, the past, present, and future. Yeah. It's the holy trinity for Japanese storytelling arcs. Psychologically, 3 is the idea of transformation. And so that would be a great reason to give him the Cerberus fruit and let him have 3 separate wolves. Then also, it would explain why his behavior and his attitude is different each time. It follows that indigenous story of you are most the person of the wolf you feed. If you give in to your anger and your whatever, and that's the wolf you feed, that's the wolf you are, etc. And so we will see him act like different people depending on the wolf he is feeding at the time and giving time to. it would make sense then that he could have a voidness inside of him that was sucking up life and changing everything, and that we have met him in two of his times now, and that we are about to find out because he's about to feed the third wolf and give it a devil fruit, and that's when we are going to truly find out and have a clash at what he's going to do.
That's really fucking cool. I know this isn't about Blackbeard, but it's so hard to look at Shanks and think about Shanks. They're so tied together as characters. Every time I see Shanks' scars reading Romance Dawn, I'm like,
yeah, his scars. When you're drawing his scars, how can you not?
Him being the wolf, him being Fenrir is interesting too, because if he is three wolves of Norse mythology, sure, he didn't personally take Shanks' arm, but if Shanks is a Tyr metaphor, the god of justice and crusades and heroism, which to me fits a lot with Shanks' vibe, then he did scar him. He left him with a scar that stings.
And it's 3 slices.
It is. Everything with Blackbeard is in 3s. I used to not be Blackbeard Cerberus pilled, but the more I think about the fact that there's 3 wolves of Norse mythology.
I just want you to tell me what scars a man in 3 slices.
We actually saw a shot of him in the past fighting with a Qatar style claw weapon, which were 3 claws attached to his forearm.
Why would he have a claw? He would have a claw if it was representing Cerberus.
I can see it. I mean, everything about him is done in 3s. I stand by. I was never Blackbeard Cerberus pilled. I didn't like it. And the more I think about Shanks as Tyr and Ace as the first attempt of the dawn of the new world, one of the possible sons, the more I'm like, oh, fuck this line up. This line up. WrestleMania is about to start, to be fair. Of course.
Let's move into...
Should we do more Romance Dawn?
Yeah, like I wanted to say when I was reading this, I understood why some people became immediately Zoro hype humans. Like that dude, when he gets released and he fights in 3-sword style and holds off the entire military brigade behind him in that stance, I was like, yeah, well, kind of hard not to think he's the coolest thing since sliced bread. When he's literally holding off and says, if a single one of you moves, they die.
I find there's often phases with Zoro where a lot of people have the arc that I kind of had with Zoro, where at first you're like, yeah, he's awesome. And then you go, well, everyone else has all these nuances. And like, I like this character's complexity and I like what they represent and I like their character arc. And Zoro's just kind of like a cool, tough dude who works really hard. And then after long enough of being in that space, you start to see nuances in Zoro, but you're like, but I still like the complexities of the other guys. And then the final step, and this is important, is you go, actually, he's just cool enough that it doesn't matter. He's just so fucking cool. He's just so cool.
If I may, let me read you this little page. All right, so I'm a pirate. I gave you my word. I fought the Navy, therefore I'm officially an outlaw. But hear this. I have a mission to fulfill. I'm going to be the world's greatest swordsman. All I have left is my destiny. My name may be famous, but it's going to shake the world. Shut up.
Hard ass line. I do love the idea that he gives that speech and Luffy's just like, cool.
No, he goes further. He tells Luffy, if you get in the way of me reaching my goals, I'm going to make you commit harry-carry. He says seppuku. And so come the shit on. Like, and then Luffy after that goes, okay. But I was like, oh, how could you not like this dude?
There's something here where Zoro to me had some of the least like nostalgic impact of the characters in this section. Like Helmeppo and Luffy, especially Koby the most, hit me a lot harder on coming back here. But I do want to say, of all the things the anime made worse, giving like the amount of space the anime gave to Zoro's backstory, I think worked out, even if it came at the expense of they couldn't do it during this arc the way they did in the Romance Dawn volume.
I thought, yeah, he's had some growth, not as much growth as others, but what Zoro is Zoro has been part of the story since chapter 2 and has been the most consistent thread of the story.
True.
He started off with a specific dream and a specific goal. He's made a bunch of growth, but when I came back here, I thought, yep, that's Zoro. Yep. And I loved that because he makes sure no matter how far out this this story goes, he is a thread that keeps it online.
But the growth he has is so important because it's similar to what we see with Luffy, where Luffy is like, yeah, my dream is what matters. I have my dream. And then on Sabaody, when he thinks he loses his friends, his dream breaks. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Because the real dream was to do it with his friends. And then the same way with Zoro, where he's like, I'll do anything, my dream, my dream, my dream. And he's like, look, I still hold on to that. But Luffy being king of the pirates comes first. I will die if it means saving him. And Kuma's like,
exactly.
Okay, here is all his pain. It's sure to kill you. And I do love later when we see Kuma's inner thoughts. He's like, well, it's definitely not going to kill him, but it'll knock him unconscious for a few days. Poor guy. And then he sees that he's standing after, even though he's unconscious. And Kuma's like, wow, what a tough guy, before he leaves.
My thinking on that was also like, nobody else believing in Luffy could have been as impactful as Zoro believing in Luffy.
Because Zoro said, I will kill you if you cost me my dream at first.
I will make you commit seppuku or harikari if you take me for my dream. And then in that time, Zoro was like, I will willingly give up my dream for Luffy.
Yes, his arc is simple but beautiful. He remains true to his dream. It is incredible. It is what drives him, but not more than protecting his goddamn captain. I'm so glad so much. Like, think about how much less compelling this reread would be if where One Piece was at right now was like the start of Wano, where we wouldn't have as much context about poneglyphs and sea stone and weaving of hats, where we wouldn't have as much context for King and Kaido, where we wouldn't have Koby's development in Egghead. Like, genuinely, I'm so glad we're doing this when we are.
I absolutely agree with that. The other thing that I really liked about this rereading Romance Dawn, first of all, I started to think about, if he gave away so many clues and he called it Romance Dawn in the beginning, is he just trying to tell us that the D clan are all people who are part of the sun and it is the dawn like so many people think it is? Even though we know new things, because I was like, he started it off calling it Romance Dawn, and one has to wonder if it's all about the D clan being part of the same family of gods, and it's the dawn of a new era. I don't know. You start to wonder.
We know the dawn of the world is a thing because of Pedro. I don't know, man. It's a thing.
But one of the things that I thought was so cool is how many times we get to see people eating together. How he always seems to end I bet you Oda just loves food, because dude always has people.
He loves food, but I think at some point he learned something about a historical famine, probably from Japan, but maybe somewhere else, because hunger and food is such a theme this fast. I noticed that too.
Yes. The people starving, that's what I was about to say. He likes to put a juxtaposition between people not having food and starving and people getting fed again for the first time. He is obsessed with the feeling of not knowing where your next meal is coming from. And
he grew up like upper middle class, right? So that's something he had to learn from study, not from personal experience.
Yes. And he's also got the feeling of eating in community, because right at the end of this, we go to the little girl's house with her mom and they eat in community and they talk together and they create warmth through their communal sharing. And he seems to have this really, really, he's placed a high value of this communal eating. And I kept thinking like, okay, what is going on here? It's almost like guest rights, like the way that he proves that Luffy and other people in the Straw Hat crew have friendship and can't be attacked by people is making it like that guest rights idea, that if you eat somewhere and somebody houses you and feeds you, then they can't kill you. It's against guest rights, because once they have friendship and once they've proven to have become allies, that's the first thing that he has them do is feed Luffy or feed the crew.
There's absolutely, that's the case. I think it's because food represents life and sustenance and community in this way, that sharing it is an invitation to caring about someone.
Yeah. And so I love that he chooses to do that. And I love that he chose to end the very first arc having a meal, everyone sitting down together and getting to say what they mean to each other and who they are and creating friendships before the Navy knocks on the door. But also, remember when I told you that the very first time that we see Zoro automatically, without thinking, follow Luffy as captain is when the bird scoops Luffy up and takes him away in our next arc?
Yeah.
But it's not. What we actually see is when we watch him in this eating moment, when the government shows up and Luffy goes off about, you were a cabin boy on Alvida's pirate ship for 2 years. Watch out for the Navy intelligence. If they find out about your background, they won't enlist you. Boom, Navy shows up. Luffy is like, okay, yep, I guess we'll be going now. Thanks for the meal. Zoro looks at him, gives him a questioning side look, and immediately stands up. And as he's walking out, puts his hand on his swords. He doesn't wait or pause. Luffy just says, okay, I guess we're going to be going then. It seems like a very simple thing where you're like, Luffy has just decided it's time to leave and let Helm Apple. No, Luffy has made a calculated decision, and Zoro doesn't know if he can trust them yet and goes to immediately not just protect himself, but if you look at the picture on page 8 of 20 in chapter 7, he goes just a step in front of Luffy, off to his right-hand side, and puts his hands on his swords. As if he's like, I'm going to have to protect my captain, I'm afraid, if you get in my way. And then when they go, aren't you going with them? And he screams, I'm not one of them. And he forces poor Koby to punch him in the face. It was super interesting because as you're watching it, you realize he already sees Luffy as his captain. He's already putting himself in front of him in the position where they're walking out of the house. He puts himself behind Luffy, in front of Luffy and the Marines. And he keeps positioning himself in every frame, so he's who people have to go through first prior to seeing Luffy. And then even when we get down to the water, and he's looking at the thing that he calls their ship, he just kind of looks at it and is like, yeah, well, I guess this sucks, but here we go. off to the Grand Line in this little boat, which shows way more faith in a person than anyone should have. I've done nothing to earn it. I don't even have an actual ship. I don't know how to navigate. Let's go. So even though the first time we see him act on his own, the very first time we see him act as if Luffy is his captain is in the house where he puts his hands on his sword and goes to protect him.
That's a really cool, like, intricate observation. There are so many little things. The King connection, I think about how interesting it is to compare King being a prisoner, being abused, Kaido showing up and being like, hey, I'm here to free you. And he's like,
Yes.
Who are you? And he's like, look, I'm the guy who's going to change this fucking world, man. Don't you worry about who
Yes.
Who am I? Don't you be concerned.
I went through the very first page of Romance Dawn, and I was looking at Gold Roger, where it said Gold Roger, and I was like, did we go through the meaning of the name Gol ever before? G-O-L?
I don't know.
In Tolkien Elvish language?
Okay, we're off to a great start.
It has a meaning. Gol is a root that means wise or related to knowledge and lore.
Okay.
And apparently, Oda is a huge fan of Tolkien's work. In Turkish, it means goal. Apparently, Oda is a huge Saw fan. In Persian, it means flower or to bloom. And in Hindu, it means round or circular. And so I was like, it's an interesting thing because I imagined what it would mean if you blended them all and you saw it as like a clue. His name is a clue. And it could be that it's symbolically all connected in that he is a flower. He is planted for the age to come. He's the circle. He is the completion of a journey. He is the start and the end, that he sends out everyone off on the great time of piracy journey. And the same with finding Laugh-Tale. You go all the way around the world to get there. That he reached the end or the goal, and that he has discovered an ancient truth but couldn't act on that ancient truth and left it like a seed for the next person.
I'm not going to say you're for sure not insane for this one. However, I think whether or not it's intentional, the fact that all this lines up so interestingly is very cool.
I thought it was so cool. So when I started to look into it and I was like, let's just imagine if you put all these things together, what it could kind of look like. I thought that would be that's a really kind of cool thing. Because if you are somebody like Oda who plants so much meaning in so many things that you do, it'd be neat if you decided, well, let's triple or quadruple ententes, and then on the top of everything, for him to make his name Roger, when Jolly Rogers are called Jolly Rogers, and then you have Joy Boy, which is the joy, and Roger. I thought that was a really cool connection of Luffy being
I hadn't thought about that. That's really
joy,
cool.
and him being the Roger, and also it being the Jolly Roger, and that the very first pirate of this era is called Roger, when there is a lore about the very first pirate's name was Roger, and that's why they called it a Jolly Roger, because he had a type of flag that was meant for what he called piracy and put it up. That's just one of the many legends. So I thought that was a cool idea for him to make his actual name be Roger, and he starts off a different kind of piracy heir.
I mentioned this to you when you first started, that something weird about One Piece is it starts off with what feels like a very generic fairy tale opening, where it's like, oh, this is the great whatever and so scene setting. And I told you that what's really cool about One Piece is when you were starting, it was just reaching the level, the point where you go, oh, it's delivering on this. It is as big as it's living up to the scale of what it's saying. And isn't it kind of cool reading this and seeing things like Gold Roger's execution and Luffy swear that he'll be surpassed Shanks, and just thinking of things like him defeating Kaido, becoming Joy Boy, liberating nations, having kings bend the knee to him and swear fealty, arriving on Egghead Island and having the enemies that were too much for us in the past be told by their superiors, don't fight this man without permission. He's an emperor. Isn't it so cool to reread this and think about where Luffy is now? Like,
so nostalgic to think about where our boy has come and where he was. I 100% agree.
I love to use that word because one of my favorite things about when Murph re-reviewed Romance Dawn, she pointed out that to her, it was so bizarre to have read something so recently and on coming back feel nostalgia. That nostalgia, she's used to being an old feeling, a feeling that harkens back to a time that is different, and that it is genuinely strange that no matter how recently you read One Piece, when you get through it and come back, isn't it weird how nostalgic it feels?
Oh, I just read it too. Like, remember,
yes,
it's a year. 1 year, and I felt so nostalgic.
And I think that's why One Piece turns you into a pusher, because how do you not want more people you love and care about to experience that feeling?
Keep in mind, people, that what people may forget is that Drawk had been banned from talking about One Piece at family functions because he would work so hard every time we were at a family function to get me to read it, that people were finally like, you can't talk about this anymore. We don't want to hear it. And then he called me up with this idea. What was that dude who said that line? And you were like, that was the line that you finally thought kind of pushed you over the edge.
The YouTuber who said it was AlphaRad. AlphaRad has a Let's Play channel, and at one point he was just hanging out and playing a video game. At some point he just goes, what's great about One Piece is the entire time you're reading it at first, you don't realize that it's planting the seeds to a garden that you don't know exists yet. And the rest of the series is exploring that garden. And that is beautiful.
If there is one thing that I love reading a story that takes its time to plant seeds and then lets me see the fruition of that growth. That's my thing.
And maybe that's the best way to look at things, like the arcs of characters like Helmeppo and Koby, where Oda is such a patient and kind storyteller to the story he's telling that it's not about planning. Everyone hypes up planning, but I think it's care beyond planning. Because whether or not he knew exactly what was going to happen with Helmeppo, he returned to where he planted the seeds and went, what water do you need? What light do you need to be the most beautiful part of this garden? And gave that character exactly what he needed. Like it's not about everything was planned. It's about recognizing that he is responsible. He's the caretaker for all of these choices. And he returns to them with patience and diligence. And that's beautiful.
And something that I think is really important to me as a reader, because I talked about this with Melanie, and she's like, well, we all trust Oda as an author, and that's why we follow. And I was like, to me, what's more incredible is that Oda trusts us to trust him. That he knows that if he goes off on a tangent and he takes a long time to deliver a thing we can feel coming, we feel it coming, and he just holds it off and builds that anticipation, he knows we trust him enough to deliver. And he allows himself to take that time because he knows we'll come along. Something that I found very interesting and very early, again, page frickin' 14 of chapter 1. He got so much done in chapter 1. I think we saw a little bit of it come back when we met Blackbeard, which is in a very important moment with Bellamy when he was learning about when it is and is not time to fight. But that moment happening in chapter 1 is way too big not to have a major callback in some of our final battle. When the mountain people come down and he doesn't fight, and then he talks to Luffy about, I can clean up a little bit of this or that, but yeah, why would I take a person's life for something so small? Captain, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. He made you look like a weakling. Why didn't you fight him? Sure, they outnumbered you and maybe they look pretty tough, blah, blah, blah. And he says, when you grow up, maybe you'll understand, kid. So that'll also be a sign for us about Luffy's maturity in a different way. He just got some grog on me, that's all. Needless killing doesn't make you a man. And so I think we're going to have that come back at some point in the final battle.
I want to point out here that you just made me think of something very interesting. That this scene is most called back to Jaya.
Blackbeard.
When Bellamy is bugging him. And yes, Blackbeard is a character so tied to Shanks. And who is the character that hypes up Luffy for how he acts in that moment? The character most tied to Shanks. God, dude, that's...
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's a reason. And so when we're having final battles... and
I've never thought about that before.
With Blackbeard and Shanks being in this, we're going to have a callback to that. Something is going to occur. I don't know yet what it is, because I was just reading it, and I was like, there's no way in hell this critical scene where he legitimately just says, when you grow up, when you're a real man, when you grow up and you're a man, maybe you'll understand.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the ways that we're going to understand, like, when to not let insult end somebody's life. From chapter 5, there's a couple of little things we learned about Luffy already being like, bro is Leroy Jenkins. Act first, think later. Because I loved when we got to see a little bit of impetuousness early on in it, and that's great, and a little bit of strangeness of stabbing ourselves in the face and a few other mild moments. But when he grabbed Helmeppo and bounced him all over the place and was like, where are your swords? They're inside. Oh, I'm going to go get them. And then just walked in without any fear and then just started doing it. It reminded me of a thing that I don't think about often. And it's that if you just act with confidence, people are like, what the hell? What's going on?
You usually just do stuff.
You can kind of just do stuff. And Luffy is the number one indicator of that.
If you just act in a way where you pretend, or at least give the air of you're not aware that social expectation is different than the behavior you're currently giving, when you break all of those, you can just kind of do anything. You can just kind of move. Guys, are you ready to be attacked? Chat, you're about to be attacked. This is important. This is important for you to be attacked now.
Don't be rude to my squishies.
Squishies, do you know why you're all bringing up all the bad people who do this? Because you want an excuse not to self-actualize.
That is actually true. He's not wrong. Bad people do it, you can tell. But good people do it all the time. Go in there and get it done.
But no, good people also need to do this. It is genuinely a strength of character to be willing to push for your virtues against social expectation. Advocates are so good at this. Like, if you're a professional advocate, like, you kill about this.
Squishies, listen to me. Tomorrow is a day of confidence. Tomorrow is the day that you say to yourself, from sunup to sundown, I'm the single most confident person because I'm hot. Why would you argue if you were hot or not? Why are you questioning your hotness? There's no need. We're a floating rock flying through space. You're hot. You don't have to argue with people. Walk around, have confidence. You're brilliant. You're attractive. You're interesting.
That's beautiful. I like that. I like how this turned out. Look, here's the deal. I don't actually like it that much looking at it the size I'm looking at it. But looking at the size you guys are looking at it, where it's a little bit compressed in a little window, like if I zoom out like that, that's good. That's good. I think it just doesn't hold up to the...
You're wrong.
Hold up to the full zoom.
And our last thing is this. We need to give it a top 5 moments from here and a grade that we would give this.
And a grade and a favorite clue.
My favorite clue, I like that in Romance Dawn. Because even though it should maybe be the hockey in the straw hat, for me, I like that I realized that there are prison guards at the islands.
My favorite clue is a clue you pointed out. The narrator saying that they made one mistake while they were there, and that being Koby. That ties in so well with Koby saying he's going to stop Luffy from achieving his dream. It's brutal, but it speaks so highly of the themes of One Piece.
Because Kobe's someone who wants to make the world better more than anyone else, and Luffy's who inspired him to pursue that dream. That's good writing. That's brilliant. I loved you pointing that out. That's so good. All right.
You're going to find squishy number 12. Hi there, YouTube. It's me, Mama Drawk. Welcome to Tinfoil Piece. Starting from Romance Dawn, which we did today together, and going all the way into the future. It's our reread with friends. And then we take all the clues and the interesting stuff because we get together for Tinfoil Hat Talk. And today, I will have to admit, things went awry. Some theories were made. They were deep. They were weird. They were wonderful. You definitely want to be a piece of that. If you want to get involved with the Patreons, we'd love to have you. Once a month, our Patreon in the crew get to come on, and we're going to be doing tier lists together with our crew once a month, and answering strange questions. They get to come on live with us. So if you want to be a part of that, you can subscribe in that way.
Hey, thank you to our special squishy Ficho Champ. Ficho Amp? Ficho Map.
Try again.
Ficho Map. Thank you, Ficho Map.
Why don't you spell it?
Phichomap. Ficho Map. And thank you to our crew, Dark Aid Kuro, Draco Meme, Dr. Jack, and Icy, or Icy Knives for long.
Okay, what is our top 5 things in here?
Top 5 characters. And then we'll grade the arc. I think Luffy is off. I don't think we need to grade Luffy on the tier of Luffy's. We did that the first road through. I think we can keep that separate. I think we're going to agree with where Luffy stands. So I think we're going to grade the arc each, and then we're going to do a top 5 together. You pick the first character. Who's first on your list? And this isn't about their performance in the arc. I wanted to know, this is who you enjoyed in the reread, which means with the context of the future, who did you enjoy most here?
I'm sorry. I know who you're going to pick, but I'm picking Shanks.
Shanks is number 1?
I miss Shanks so much all the time. When I
he barely
read him
exists
here,
in this story.
When I read him here and saw him, I was like, oh my God, it's Shanks. I miss you so much. You got to come back, Shanks. Shit's gone wild.
You're saying Zoro number 2 already, chat? I think Zoro's my number 3 pick because number 2 is Koby. Shockingly, Koby has more of a presence here. And if we're talking about what we enjoy for the future, at first I was enjoying Zoro more. But when we get to the end and we see the moment of Luffy forcing Koby to be his enemy so that he can pursue his dream, it made what happened in Egghead for Koby so much stronger. Like, Jesus.
I will agree.
Jesus. The impact of reading that now is crazy. Like, literally, you asked me 6 months ago, and I'm saying Zoro is number 2. That's not the case anymore.
I'm saying Zoro is number 3, though. Zoro,
yeah, of course,
was magnificent. And to see how Zoro was Zoroing so hard, how he just was the same dude. Like, has he learned things? Yes. Has he grown? Yes. Is he a bigger dude? Yes. He put himself through all that training. He understood what he needed to do. He's a different boy, but he's the same boy. And it was really cool to see just how cool this kid is and how we have a thread of one character who doesn't go off crazy in a new direction. Zoro just quietly moves forward in himself.
I fully agree. Guys, you know I got to do it to you. Number 4 is Helmeppo.
No!
Did he suck here? Yes. At no point was he enjoyable here. But if we're doing this in the context of a reread, his arc is so well laid up here. It is so delivered on. It's crazy. He sucks here, but again, I'm ranking this as a reread. I'm not ranking it as its own. And goddamn Helmeppo is delivered on as this goes on.
That's upsetting and true. As the 5th person, I'm going to pick the crew of Shanks.
I think that counts as one guy.
Yeah, they are one person according to me in this moment. You can't just pick one out. If I was going to, it'd be the dude who...
Yeah, who would you pick? Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo?
It would be dude who shoots the dude in the head.
So it'd be Lucky Roo.
Yeah, but I really think it's just all of them together. Oh, shit. No, you're right. You know what, crew? Bye. You're off. My good buddy Rafe made a good point. It's Roger.
His 2 panels, or like 4 panels. You know what? Who am I to disagree?
On.
You're right. You're right. You're right as hell.
The fact that I didn't remember it is upsetting because seeing Roger in the beginning of this thing, I actually giggled out loud. I went,
You know what's crazy is I think by the end of the series, this list would change for us and Roger would maybe be the number one.
You're not wrong.
We have to rank it on an insane curve.
I am not ranking it against other things. I'm ranking it against itself.
I'm ranking it against One Piece, which is why I'm grading on a curve. If I were ranking this to all manga, this would be like a solid A to me. Because I'm ranking this against One Piece arcs, I am giving it a C+, which seems low.
Funny.
You know where we're going. You know the heights we're reaching.
Now, I am marking this very different than Drawk. Drawk is drunk.
I'm not drunk. I'm a good teacher.
I am marking this against itself as a standalone story, and I think I'm going to mark all of them as a standalone story. If I'm marking it inside of One Piece itself, it's a C+. That is not a lie.
Okay, fair. So how about that's the way we do it? Is we're both grading differently, and that's why our grades are different as we go.
But Rafe, no. It's 75.
Plus is only 78 for you weird Americans. Americans have have an insane system of grades. We're ranking on the Canadian, European, most of the rest of the world system. We're an 86 as an A.
But because I'm going to mark it as itself, as if it's a standalone story, and whether I would enjoy this as a standalone moment story, and I would go, that was cool. It was a really good story. In that case, I'm giving it an 84.
I think that's reasonable. I think
that's a B+ in university and a B in high school because we're dumb. You'll grade it off of other arcs, and I'll grade it as a standalone story.
Yeah, I'm grading the class of One Piece on a bell curve, and it's an insane curve.
I wonder if eventually, if we get to 100,000 people followers and we start moving up in this way, if I'm gonna get a tattoo.
Hey guys, Mama Drawk just committed at 100,000 followers. By the way, I do need to find my Gear 5 costume because Mama promised, even though she promised for me. But Mama did just promise that at 100,000 she has to get this as a tattoo.
Whoa, man, I didn't say that. I said if I would get one of these as a tattoo.
One of them. Yeah. Fair enough.
Because then I get to compare a bunch of different tattoos. Do you like how my son cheated and made the gum fruit be Luffy? He gave it a scar.
Yeah, but look how much stronger the composition is by not having to force in the entire scene.
I don't mind. I think it's an excellent creative cheat. But
does it not? Does it not represent Luffy?
I wonder if we should turn everybody's tattoos into an iron-on patch. Because it's... And I would want... Honestly, now I want a jacket with every arc's patch that you create.
I'm excited for you to make this... You are going to single-handedly, with this series, make the One Piece fan base more insane.
I am going to make more and more opportunities to show you how everything is set up, and there are crazy, crazy theories, and they're correct.
Everybody, thanks for being here. Mama, thanks for being here. I am excited to go back through. I'm glad I had time to read after fishing a boy's tackle box out of my lake. Again, I want to point out, after being a 30-year-old man in full clothes walking into a lake, Drawk this morning was a 30-year-old man walking into a lake fully dressed. That was me today.
That checks out. That's your vibe, actually. That's how I think of you.
All right, everybody. You know what? You know what I can confidently say? You know what I can say at the end of all this? At the end of all this nonsense we've been on together?
What?
That at the end of the day, until next time.
Squish on squishies.
It's been lovely talking to you. Oh, that was so much fun.